Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. I loved talking to Ryan Meyer of Highly Suspect about their history, about their new album, and about the future of the band. This first aired on Thursday, September 19th. Let's do it. Tonight's special guest started a cover band 15 years ago, and in that same year, that band released its debut EP featuring their first original songs. And over the course of the next few years, they released more EPs, all leading up to their debut studio album, Mr. Asylum, which came out in 2015. And nearly a decade since that record, they gave fans their fifth full-length, As Above, So Below, which came out in July of this year. Hanging with us tonight is Highly Suspect's Ryan Meyer. Ryan, thank you so much for hanging, man.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you, everybody.
Listen, it's been a minute since you guys released As Above, So Below. You've got some space between it and where you're at right now. How are you feeling with the album out?
Honestly, never been better. The past couple of records were experimental. They were difficult to make for the wrong reasons. And those challenges and experiences led us to realize what we didn't want and what we needed. And that was to strip back all of the bullshit and just make a record in a room all together. So that's what you get when you hear this record. I mean, there's literally five guys. We're a 5-piece now. There's 5 guys in a room, and you can hear that. You can hear the guys stepping on their pedal boards. You can hear me, putting the drumsticks down on the drums or whatever. A lot of the takes in the record were one pass all the way through. We wanted it to be authentic and real, and something that people could resonate in, because to each their own, but there's a lot of records out there that are so perfect and so clean, the drums are quantized to a grid, and we just, we tried it, we did it, and it just didn't really feel like us. And like I said, to each their own, like, no offense to anybody that does that, but it just didn't feel like us. So this record feels like us, and that feels so good. To answer your question,
good, man.
That's how we're going to be doing records from here on out.
Right on, man.
Proof's in the pudding, man.
Is that how you recorded earlier? In the life of Highly Suspect. So did this feel like a return to some of those earlier days as a band?
Yeah, actually, some of the history that you had mentioned earlier. We were a cover band, and we were still a 3-piece. Rich, Johnny, and I, we took our cover band money. We saved up all summer, and we went to a studio in New Hampshire, and I had been to an audio engineering school. So I knew a couple of guys there, and we hired one of my old professors to record a self-titled album that is not technically released, but it is out there. You can listen to it on YouTube. And we plan on doing a release for that later in our careers. But, that was how we made that record. That was the very first album we ever made. And you were right. We did make an EP first. There was the very first thing we made was an EP, but the first album we made was the self-titled one. And we made it all together, not in the same room, but all together at once with isolated amps and things like that. And then the next album that we made Mr. Asylum. That was all together again, more broken apart, more like that was when we started getting into the sort of like modern mechanics of recording, isolated amps, overdubs, things like that.
Yeah.
But we had written everything together, and that was the most important part, that everything was written together in the same room, which is hard when you've been in a band together for a long time, because you're basically married to a bunch of dudes. So you got a lot of like internal issues that have nothing to do with music. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And you have to face that stuff, and it's really difficult. I think that's probably the reason why a lot of people don't want to do that.
Or why bands don't last or whatever. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because, the people that love the music so much are the ones who always get hurt by that. But right. That is the reality of it.
I love hearing that, man, and that history and the self-titled album. Because like my friends, I've heard this from other people, I've read it online, but with this new album, a lot of people have said like, man, this sounds like old school Highly Suspect. Like this sounds like the early days. And hearing you say all this, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it literally sounds that way.
Because it literally is, yeah. Yeah. There's no trap hats in the songs, which I'm very happy about. Trap hats are cool, but not for me. And you know, the way we were doing things in the last records changed the live set too, because we had to playing on a click track is one thing, but playing the tracks, you know, just I love bands like the Foo Fighters. They don't do that. They just get out there with their amps, and if they suck, they suck. You know what I mean? They're accountable for their actions. And
yeah.
you know, when Nine Inch Nails started doing that, they were kind of the first of that. And like there's a famous story of them opening for Lollapalooza, and they had cassettes where they're backing tracks because they didn't have digital stuff yet. And Lollapalooza was like, it was like in Arizona, I think. Really interesting documentary about that festival, by the way. The story is that they their equipment sat out in the sun waiting for them to perform, and the tape melted and their entire set went down. So you know, that sort of like element to your set changes the way you perform. You sort of like lose a bit of a flow in that sense, like whereas like we just kind of start the song when it naturally feels ready to go. And you know, you're talking about maybe milliseconds, but it's still timing. And versus like, you know, I'm waiting for the click track to start, and there's things called cues where I hear like a little voice in my ears that goes 1, 2, 3, and then we start the song, and it kind of like makes it chopped up. You know, it's less beer drinking and rock and roll, and more of like you're at a job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, like you're sitting in your cubicle and it's like, all right, and now you can start.
Yes. And that's cool, you know, for some people, but I really felt like it was taking us away from the things that people really resonated with.
Well, and yeah, I mean, you know, you're talking about the live show now. And so to sort of bring that experience into the studio gives the album that feeling, which is great. And yeah, I think a unique listening experience for a new album these days. But then also, you guys are on the road. You're covering a ton of ground across North America this year. You're going to hop over to Australia in December. Like, then you get just kind of switch it back to the stage. And that's got to be such a fun feeling for you guys to keep that spontaneity or whatever that might be, that energy that you've had on the stage, that you now have in the studio, that you're taking back to the stage.
And also, you know, for us, there's a sentimental attachment to the songs because we wrote them together, and there were arguments, there were fights, there was difficult things that made them challenging to make. And, you know, in the previous records, there were co-writers, there were producers making, you know, like Natural Born Killer, great song. The band had nothing to do with that. It was made by a great producer, songwriter named Drew Folk. He had this beat. John literally went in the studio and wrote and sang that song. And like, I think it took like an hour to do it. And so when we're performing that live, it feels like we're a cover band again, which is something that I appreciate happened in my life, but I don't want to do that anymore. And for people out there that are in a cover band, like you probably get what I'm talking about, you know, like it's cool. You get to do it, but, you know, I like playing my songs, and I like people. It's validating for me to play something that I love so much and then see a lot of people also loving that. And there is no attachment to a song if someone else wrote it and I'm telling people that it's mine, but it's not, and I'm just playing it. It just doesn't, there isn't the same connection there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, it's interesting to hear you kind of come back to that idea of you guys writing these songs together in the same room, and all of that, you know, just all of the good and the bad that comes with that, right? All of that entails. There's got to be a lot of trust for that to happen, for you guys to be able to do that and actually create songs that are worth recording and worth putting on an album. There's got to be a lot of trust for you guys to be in the studio, to be in the same room in the studio and record together. There's got to be a lot of trust for you guys to be on stage without backing tracks or without click tracks or without cues or anything, where you're just trusting each other to go back and forth. I mean, no doubt the three of you who have been doing this for 15 years have built that trust up, but also adding, you know, turning this into a 5-piece. Do you feel like that, like you guys have hit that point of trusting each other and kind of relying on one another for direction or whatever that might look like in the studio or on the stage?
Well, that's a great question. I think more so now than we have certainly in the past 5 or 6 years. Around MCID, there started being some confusion in the audience. And that was because we were really struggling to work together for, a variety of reasons. And, you can point the finger of blame to whoever or whatever, but the fact is that we struggled to work together. So on that record, we didn't. And then on MCI and DC, Midnight Demon Club, we didn't really work together. Like there was a lot of distrust. It was really hard for us to get along. I didn't know if the band was going to make it. I didn't know if I wanted to be in the band anymore.
Oof,
yeah, it was really rough. And that was all happening during COVID. It was a whole clusterfuck of emotions and complicated issues that were not being resolved. So I was literally, and I was going through surgeries and, I was getting like my body repaired from just drumming my entire life. And, I was really questioning whether I wanted to do the thing that I loved the most. And that was a really hard time. So when we went into making this last record, there was a conversation in the back of a hotel on a rainy night in Houston. We were talking about going into pre-production, and there was all kinds of ideas being tossed around about how we were going to do it. And basically, I put my foot down, Rich put his foot down. We were like, look, here's the deal. We're either going to finish up our contractual obligations to the festivals we have booked and the tours we have booked, so the fans that bought tickets are not hurt. And we're going to call it quits, or we're going to make an album together, in the same room, writing together, working through our issues together. And we're going to make this album as a band, as a unit, or it's not going to happen. And it kind of took that make or break moment for us, to make that situation happen. And let me also just add, we were all fucking completely broke. So it was insanely stressful to also say, like, this thing that I need, I'm not going to do because I have to do it the way that we need to do it. And if I'm not going to waste my time anymore. So we did exactly that because, we were up against a wall. So we went into the studio and it was really difficult.
Let me ask you, man, on that rainy night, was it like immediate? Did you guys all say, all right, yeah, we're in? Or did you sleep on it? Like what did that look like?
Well, to be honest, John's been going through a lot of stuff, personal things, and I won't speak on that, but he has been going through some stuff, and it put him into a pretty negative state of mind. And we were just trying to get him back into the fold, to get him to work with us again. And so Rich and I and Mark and Matt, we had a conversation and, all got on the same page. That's what they wanted to do. They loved Highly Suspect before they were in Highly Suspect, and they wanted to get back to the roots, and we wanted to get back to the roots. And, I'm not talking shit here. I love John. He's my brother. And you gotta stand by your brothers. He was going through some rough shit and he was reacting the way he was reacting because of it. So I didn't take it personally, but it still was hard. And it sort of like forced him to work through the stuff that was really hard for him to work through. And he talks about all that stuff openly in the album. Again, not even talking shit here. You listen to the album. He talks about his father. He talks about all the things he was going through in relationships. Like, if you listen to the album and you take some mental notes, like, dude was going through it. So we kind of like forced him against, like, between a rock and a hard place. And I think the music kind of saved the band. It saved his relationship with us, and it helped him quite a bit mentally, because it forced him to face the hardest challenges and forced us to face the hardest challenges all together in the room, because we couldn't run from it. We had to make this stuff together. And in order to do that, we had to communicate. And like I was saying earlier, like, you're married to a bunch of dudes and there's a whole bunch of stuff that gets in the way that has nothing to do with music.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have to put all that stuff aside, or you have to put aside time to work through all that shit. And
But you have to,
there is
you have to, because otherwise what the fans get is going to be a fake result, an album that maybe sounds good here or there, but it's not real.
Yeah.
Or we get this like stripped down, authentic, just bearing your heart and soul.
Raw.
And that, dude, and that's, I mean, that's what music's all about. That's what rock and roll's all about. Like, that's the connection that you have.
Exactly. And that was the whole precedent moving into the album was, it was finally like, okay, fine. Well, how do you guys want to make this record? And what do you want it to sound like? And we were just like, I don't care what it sounds like. I don't care if it turns out to be a Fish album or a Disturbed album. I don't care what direction it goes in. I want it to be the thumbprint of the band. That was the sentence I used so much. It was, I needed to be the unique thumbprint of Highly Suspect. And the only way we're going to get that is if we go in there without any sort of idea of what it needs to be, or what trend it needs to compete with, or what sound is doing well at the time that we're into. Like, it just, hey, here's this guitar riff. Okay, here's what I think sounds cool on that. Not because it's what someone else did, but because that's just what I think would be cool on it. And then, like, let's all riff together and build a thing. And then, there was a lot of hardship in the beginning. There was a lot of like arguments and people wearing sunglasses inside, and storm outs and drinking. And it was, it should have been a fucking reality TV show. But once we got through all that, it started, like, things started kind of picking up naturally and getting positive, and we started like working better as a team, and there was like a better morale and a better vibe, and like the music literally started saving the band. It was fucking wild to experience it, because we were also working from John and a couple of the guys are night owls, so we made a compromise. We started work at 2 p.m. and we would go until 2 a.m. with like a 2-hour lunch break, and we were working 6 days a week for 3 months.
Wow.
So, and it was like, we all hit burnout at different stages. So then, but because by then we were working so well as a team, it would be like, okay, like, clearly you need a break. Why don't you like go take the day, go take a walk, go see a friend, whatever you got to do, go home and see your family. Like, we were really working to take care of each other, to build this thing together, and it unified us. And then I remember, like, at one point John was like kind of laughing, and he looks at me and he's like, dude, what is this? Are we making a classic rock record right now? And I was like, yeah, like, and I don't care. This is great. I love it. Like, this feels like all the music that I grew up with when I was on construction sites and there was a boombox blasting in the corner, what I mean? Like, all like the old Skinner or like ZZ Top, or, you know what I mean? Like Mamas and Papas and stuff, like, the things I'm talking about, like that style of music was your Tom Petty's and shit. Like that's what we grew up listening to. That's what was on the radio, and it's what we loved. And it just sort of kind of came out in music, and there's still some hard rock stuff in there, but you're definitely hearing like, a bunch of 90s babies growing up on classic rock,
I love that, man. Well, I mean, talking about all the difficulties and the whatever, the obstacles and roadblocks and speed bumps, I'll insert your own analogy there, that led to this album. Here we are, album's out. You started this conversation saying, this is how we're doing it from now on. This is how we're doing every album. So like at the end of it, all of that crap coming together unified you. I mean, you use that word unified. Like, do you feel like you're in a better spot than you've ever been as a band?
Yeah. I mean, certainly,
which is amazing.
Yeah. I'm so thankful for it. I mean, certainly more so than we ever have in the past 10 years. And, I don't blame anyone. Like, situations can be really difficult, and how people react to them is on them. But man, the first 2 records, it was like we had a jetpack on us, and we went from a bunch of like party animals that like, played at a bar for tips or whatever. It was like, we went from free beer and lots of chicks was like good enough for us to Grammys. To
Grammy nominations. Right. Yeah.
Dude, it was like, and it, speaking personally, went straight to the head. It really did. Like, I remember when MCID came out, I was like, whatever, like, what am I going to wear to the Grammys this year? You know, it almost like felt like my shit didn't stink. And I think that's a really like toxic place to be in. But on a positive note, I think like how many people have spoken about trauma making their life better, you know, like I love this expression that you hear in therapy often. It's like trauma makes you the person that you wish you had while you were going through that.
Wow. Yeah.
So
damn, man.
Here I am.
Yeah.
I wish I had me through all those years to talk to, because I didn't. And no one gave a shit. All the executives, you know, they were nice enough, but like they were trying to take care of their families and they're trying to get paid. You know, they had their own motivations. So I didn't have any help from them, and my family didn't know. They're not in the music business. So
right. Yeah.
My friends were my age, and they were just like, yeah, just have a beer or whatever, ride it out. Like, you know, they didn't have great advice to give me. Yeah.
Yeah. Or they see you and like, dude, you're a rock star. Like shut up, man. Just get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, dude, you're playing to thousands of people, and I'm like, you know, plumbing. Right. You're gonna shut the up. You know, and like they're not wrong, but they're also not helping. So,
right. You're still a human, right? And you still go through things, and just like any job, you still experience things, and on a whole different level that most people can't understand. Yeah. You are in this band that you're like married to the guys, like you've said, and the stuff you go through is unique relative to the rest of the world. But you know, just like that phrase you said about trauma, you know, I've said this, or I've heard this said to me too from other artists who write really honest and really deep music, really, you know, transparent music, is that when you confront that darkness, or when you confront that reality around you, all of a sudden light starts peeking through, right? Like, it's maybe cheesy, but yeah, you can't have light without dark, and blah, blah, blah. But there is a reality to that.
Yeah. And I think your first instinct, it's almost comical how your first instinct is to run from pain. But it's like, you know, the Buddha says that, you know, suffering is a part of life.
Yeah.
You can't have that. You can't have the good without the bad. And, you know, obviously that was I'm not, you know, don't quote me. I'm not quoting the Buddha here. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's basically the synopsis of it, is that, like, you know, suffering is a part of life, and yet we run from that. So, yeah, you know, we'll like pick up the bottle and just try to, like, you know, party it out. And, but once you start actually facing it, which is, you know, usually terrifying, and complicated and, difficult, things do start getting better. But that's only because you're working through it, you know, inch by inch. And until you do that, you can't, you know, the proof's in the pudding. This record fucking rips, dude. It's the best we've ever made. And we have more down the pipeline. There's songs that we're going to be releasing, more songs from this album as a, you know, much later. There's going to be an extended version of this album, that, you know, and all the songs are awesome. And, you know, because we started kind of getting into a flow once we kind of like broke the dam, and wrote, you know, however many songs, 20, 25 songs or something like that. And then it was like, okay, well, if all 5 of us don't like this song, even if it's 4-1, doesn't make the cut. Wow. Which was difficult. You know, usually it was me. I was like, this song sucks. And everyone's like, just do it. We all like it. And I'm like, no, if I don't like this song, I'm going to hate playing it. And I'm going to possibly play this for the rest of my life. Well, we've already learned this through the last records where we tried stuff. Like, are we not going to learn from our mistakes here? Like,
I don't want this sounds familiar, man.
Yeah. I'm not here to repeat the bullshit. I want to like get through it, learn it, you know? So, I don't know how we got there, but that's all really important stuff that I think really helped make Highly Suspect again.
I love hearing this, Ryan. Thank you so much for sharing all this, man. It's fascinating to reflect on that history, but also to look ahead, right? So the album As Above, So Below, it is out now. You guys are going to be on the road covering a ton of ground all over the country and globally too. And sounds like, fans can expect some more music on the horizon as well.
Yeah. And they can expect, to see the band that they fell in love with in the first place. Nice. You know, We're not going to be just like playing what we think is going to trend on TikTok.
Good. Thank you, man. Thank you.
You know what I mean? Can more people please say that? Like, what are we doing?
Good, man. Well, on that note, we'll wrap this up. But we've got tour dates. We've got details at loudwire.com. You can also grab them and grab details on the album, everything going on at highlysuspect.net. Ryan, this was great, man. Hopefully we can hang again soon. You're welcome back anytime.
Would love that, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.